Hello everyone. In this week we're going to talk about how to align assessment goals across various levels. So there are 3 main readings for you to complete this week, and we'll begin by talking about 4 levels of assessment. So at the largest level we have institution learning outcomes. You'll often see them referred to as ILOs, and those institutional level outcomes are the very start of the assessment process. And the idea is that general education program and course assessments should all be aligned with the institution learning outcomes. There are going to be some arguments in your readings this week too about the importance of having a campus-wide committee, because different schools and different programs and departments might have different practices, but they should all have some level of alignment. So the first reading we'll talk about is the BEARS. The role of institutional research is an interesting one, and every institution has a different approach to institutional research. So it will be dependent on the institution type and size. Our Widener, for example, has one institutional research professional working directly in the president's office. Sometimes the institutional research office is under the provost, and there may be other models as well, depending on the university. But institutional research offices can be helpful because they have knowledge of the institutional student data, and they also are able to use external sources of data for comparing student groups. However, their data is often limited to demographic information or course performance information, like grades and whether they have graduated or not, or retention levels. So institutional research offices can kind of complement assessment activities, but they are not performing assessment per se. One reason you would want to have an institutional research person on a committee is that they have a neutral perspective. They're not aligned with any particular program or school. And then again, assessment begins at the very top level, at the institutional level, and should have some type of committee. The second reading is your chapter 2 in the Walvoord book or notebook. And again, the 4 levels are discussed, so institutional, general education, program, and course. And Walvoord talks about embedding assessment practices, so making it kind of more natural to all of those levels to be performing assessment. And again, Walvoord is the one who really argues for the need for a committee. And that committee would then have oversight, and they would be able to make recommendations regarding student learning outcomes. Susky is actually more about larger level goals and planning. However, it can be applied to student learning outcomes as well. So in the chapter about the purpose, who are you and why do you exist, I want you to think about the purpose of student learning outcomes. So for an institution, when students graduate, what can the institution say those students learned? Was it communication skills? Was it presentation? Was it hard science skills? Do all students leave with a really good understanding of math, for example? So what's the goal there? Widener has one specific learning outcome that is rather unique, and that is the civic engagement piece. So that is embedded into our learning and assessment. Then also, how do we both articulate and measure those outcomes? I think the goals and plans chapter can be helpful in its discussion about operational planning, in how do we get from point A to point B. So we can say that we have these institutional learning outcomes and course learning outcomes. how are we getting then to the results? So those are the readings for the week. I also just wanted to briefly review the topic proposal, because those levels really illustrate what is available to you for your final project. So you can choose an institution level assessment. If you do that, you'll see that at the bottom there, I would ask that you choose just one learning goal, because you're going to be thinking about how do different programs across the university address that one institutional learning goal. So that could be, for example, students are going to leave Widener with great oral presentation skills. Well, fantastic, but what courses and programs are going to be used to evaluate that learning outcome? What measures are going to be used? In which courses should that oral presentation be a component, for example? And then there are the other levels as well. So you can choose an academic program, you can choose the general education curriculum, or you can choose a more administrative program like study abroad, like civic engagement, like a living learning community. That would be under co-curricular programs. So I just need a few sentences about that, and it can be entered via text entry on the Canvas course. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks.